knows if you're a bitter Utah fan. But what I am not going to do on my show is that I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, can you believe this? A head coach in college football wanted his scholarship players, his highly recruited players, his well-compensated players. He wanted them to come back from injury 3 weeks early. He wanted them to be on the field competing. How dare he? Knock it off. We're not doing that, okay? It's not the correct stance to have as a fan. And don't give me your, well, I'm just concerned about player safety. No, you're not. You're not. Don't pretend that you are. You're mad that he's gone, and now you want to go back and cherry pick the things that were unlikable about him or about his regime. Or you want to favorably compare your new guy because you're not 100% sure that the new guy's actually going to be better. So let's cling to the things that we think are better. And I'm happy that there's improvements here, at least as far as we could tell. Morgan Scalley, the players, they've talked about health. They've talked about altering the practices and making sure that people's bodies, and Devin Dampier joined us on the show yesterday. We did another half hour with Dev. Dev is looser and happier now than he was this time a year ago. Is that because of Morgan Scalley and he's in the way he compares favorably to Kyle Whittingham? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Right? Is it just because the quarterback is now a little bit more firmly established? Is it because his body is healthier? Probably all of those things. But at the end of the day, what we're doing is we're saying, see, this is how Morgan Scalley is better because he's taking care of the guy's health better. Maybe. I hope you're right. I hope this article is right. I hope the players are right. I hope Morgan is right. But we don't actually know yet. All right? You cannot be part of a fan base who becomes petulant and ungrateful for something that was great for 21 years or for, 16 of those 21 years was something you could be really, really proud of. And then because of how it ended and because you feel jilted or you feel like the kid that got left behind in the divorce, that you say, oh, yeah, and look at this. There were 6 guys in this article. All right? And aside from Jalen Glover and Van Fillinger, the guys that they talked to were mostly guys who were, dare I say it, disappointing players. If you had talked to me about Kyle Whittingham 3 or 4 years after I transferred out of the Utah football program, 3 or 4 years after I was basically cut in not so many words because I cut myself, but it was because I wasn't going to get on the field. I was not going to see anything that resembled action. I wasn't good enough. They had determined that. I had refused to accept that about myself, but if I'm being honest, I started to internalize that a little bit also. If you had asked me 2 or 3 or 4 years after I walked away from the program, hey, what's Kyle Whittingham like as a head coach? It would have looked a lot like this. It would have looked a lot like, oh, man, I can't believe what a jerk he was. I can't believe how he just overlooked every good thing I did. I can't believe that he didn't think I was better. I can't believe that he gave this guy and this guy and this guy and this guy scholarships even though I was better than them. And I'm 43 years old almost, and I still believe some of those things that I just gave you as examples. But I'm more mature. And by the way, this maturity happened a decade plus ago for me in realizing that at that time, when I walked away from the program and when I had these bad feelings and when I was disgruntled like the players in this article, I was fresh off of disappointment of my own. And I wanted to point a finger and say that was because of somebody else. And look, Van Fillinger probably has a case. All right? Everything I know about Tavita Fotu is that he has no case at all to complain about what he was or was not in a Utah football uniform. And there are guys that played on the team with him that could correct me or tell me I'm wrong or whatever, that know a hell of a lot more than I ever will about that individual situation. But that's not the person I want to hear from about the legacy of a coach that is a Hall of Fame talent, Hall of Fame legacy, Hall of Fame contributor to the University of Utah. And that whole bridge is being burnt over and over and over again and crumbling. You're not going to get a statue until the man is dead, if you ever get one, because of the fact that, he's a spiteful, petty individual on the way out the door. The people that are left behind, including a huge portion of the fan base, are feeling that spite and feeling that pettiness themselves. And the exit is unceremonious and ugly instead of being what I hoped it would be, what you hoped it would be. A ride off into the sunset. This is a beautiful thing. We are less than a week away from the season kicking off. Jason Batacchio, I love you, dog. This is not the time.
Yeah, I'm wondering here, because I come from obviously a different perspective. It seems to me like this is one of those, you could compare it to what was a long-term relationship that was really, really good for the most part, and then you broke up at the end, and you're going through the stages of grief and denial and anger, and it seems like the fan base and the university, they're not to acceptance yet, and it seems like maybe there's a little bit of taking advantage of that in writing these articles and seeing if you can get you can benefit a little bit from that.
That's a great point, Andrew. What we're getting here is we're getting anger clicks. Yeah, that's right. And this is also a thing we don't like about him, is he not only did he leave us and he take coaches and players with him, and he got paid $13 million from the university that he should have given back, and his brother that he took with him, we had to sue him to get money. Not only that, but look what he did to Van. Look, I'm not telling you Kyle Whittingham is any kind of angel, or I'm not telling you that Kyle Whittingham is a perfect coach by any stretch of the imagination, but he's better than any other option you had the last 21 years. Beyond the shadow of a doubt, that is factual. Perhaps if you got lucky and the timing worked out, you could have had Kalani Sitake at the University of Utah instead.
Yeah, but is Utah in the position they are now if they had I don't like.
Great
and I've had a front
Andrew.
row seat to Kalani Sitake and his growth, and he is exactly what BYU needs right now, and he's a very good coach, and he would do very well at the University of Utah. I don't know that he would have done as well as Kyle Whittingham did at the time Kyle Whittingham was here.
None of us will ever know that. I think Kalani is a wonderful coach. I think he's a great person. I'm jealous that BYU has a coach like that, except we have a coach like that at the University of Utah also. So jealous is the wrong word for it. What I'm jealous of is the fact that Kalani Sitake, who is a great coach and a great person, now has resources that magically coincide with him having, 23 wins in the last 2 seasons? The fact that those two things are happening concurrently, an NIL era, an enthusiastic and wealthy booster base, helping Kalani, right? I mean, you could revise history and you can revise the present however you want, all right, to make yourself feel better. But this is not the way, ladies and gentlemen. Go to every program in every state, in every city in the country, and there is a head coach who is pressuring players to get their butts back on the field as soon as they can. Are there rare occasions on which the communication between a medical staff and a coaching staff breaks down or is inadequate in the first place, and that player feels victimized by it? Yes, sure there is. It does not mean what you think it means. It does not mean what these comments, not even the article, I want to be fair to Jason Batacchio, what these comments and these reactions are saying. Just like, oh, yeah, see? This guy was bullying players and threatening players into getting back on the field. I hope he was.
That's the job of a coach.
Do you know how many guys in that room, in that meeting room and on that roster, do you know how many of those guys would die to get on the field as much as they wanted Van Fillinger on the field? How many guys would just be like, please, 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 let Van stay hurt and let me go take his reps? You know how many guys want to be in that position? And when you are the guy in that position and your ankle hurts, your leg doesn't work, The grass is greener on the other side. The grass is greener on the walk-on side who doesn't have to do jack. If you're Van Fillinger, he's probably the only guy built like him with a scholarship like him and NIL like him that ever looked at a walk-on who got to sit around on game day and sit around for most of practice and say, man, I'm jealous of that guy. Because he's in pain, he's hurting, he's forcing his way through. And you know what, Van? I am now, after being critical of you for years, I am grateful that you gave it your best and that you tried real hard. I don't love the fact that part of the story now is you feeling like you have to go out there and say, oh, yeah, by the way, this coaching staff bullied me into getting back on the field. All right.
And what the article's not telling you is that I would bet a decent amount of money that every single one of these players wanted to go out and play.
What you're frustrated with is the injury itself. That's the first thing that you're mad about when you're a player. And then you're mad that your body doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. And then you're mad that the recovery doesn't go as smoothly as you thought. And then you're mad at the people that you think are the reason for the recovery not going all that smoothly. And that is where this thing with the coaches comes in. Because you're like, well, wait, if I would have been given my full 6 weeks, or if I would have been allowed to redshirt, as Van disputes that he was not allowed to redshirt, the way that we were told was like, hey, man, he probably should have redshirted last year, but he wanted to play. There are no heroes and no villains in this college football game. Not in an absolute sense, all right? I wish it were as black and white as that. I wish it were as binary as that. But you cannot separate one thing from the other. You cannot separate Utah's physical, hard-nosed, we're going to beat you up, we're going to run the ball down your throat, we're going to stop you from running the ball, death taxes in Utah football. If you were celebrating any of that, which all of us were, when Joel Klatt was saying it and Kirk Herbstreit was saying it and Kyle Whittingham has one of the toughest teams in the whole nation, when you were clapping about that and you were patting yourself on the back for being a fan of that, you have to accept that this was part of it. That there were guys in that locker room who were expected to be tougher than they wanted to be. Maybe on rare occasion to their own physical detriment. At the expense of their own health. And let me tell you something. I, like all of you, get a little uncomfortable when I see these 50 and 60-year-old football players walking like they're 80 and 90 years old, saying, "Ooh, man, they really sacrificed a lot for our entertainment, didn't they?" But I stop short of chastising the system and saying, how dare Kyle Whittingham pressure that guy into playing. But also, by the way, have you seen Van Fillinger since he stopped playing football at the University of Utah? I don't know if he can run fast. I don't know if his ankle's better. But the guy's doing okay physically. Also, he voluntarily decided he wanted to be part of a bull riding challenge. So you can't, and I'm using Van as the example here because he's the headliner, but like you can't talk about how your body is broken down and destroyed from your football career and not because of my own choices, but because the coaching staff bullied me into this, and then sign up to ride a bull for fun. You can't do those two things. That's like the workers' comp claim that the investigator comes and finds you putting shingles on your own roof, but you're like, oh yeah, I have to. I'm bedridden. I can't. Like, those two things can't be true. You're not going to get me to revise history and say, oh yeah, look at this guy. And I know a lot of you are probably mad that it sounds like I'm defending everything that Kyle Whittingham does or Kyle Whittingham did. That's not what I'm doing. All right? But acting like this is outside of the norm in college football, that players felt pressure to get back on the field because of some unique evil emperor named Witt, and nobody else does that Kalani's not doing that Morgan won't be doing that Sonny Dykes isn't yelling at guys, Get your pansy behind out of the training room and onto the field. Even Lincoln Riley's soft ass is telling USC players, hey, put some tape on it, rub a little dirt on it, and let's get back on the field. This is football culture that is being described in the article. And if you don't like it, that's fine. If you want to shake a finger at it and poo-poo it and not buy a ticket because of it, that's also fine. But if you're going to act like this is unique to the University of Utah under Kyle Whittingham's leadership, you are completely delusional, up in the night, outside of your mind. And I didn't even yet address the fact that when coaches are asked for comment about this, what do? They deflect. They say, well, hold on a minute. We don't make decisions on whether players are available or not. That's on the medical professionals. That's on the training staff. That's on the team doctors. Okay, yes. You know who else feels pressures from coach to let players back on the field? Medical staff, team doctors. Again, this is part of the whole deal in football. And if we were talking about players from the 1990s and Ron McBride used to do this to us, I'd be saying the same thing, but I'd also be going, you know what? And these guys were doing it for free. These guys were doing it for nothing. A lot of the guys mentioned in this article, well, all of them were on scholarship, free education, better housing and meal plan than any other college student up there. And plenty of them had extra money on top of that from an NIL front. If you don't want to be part of a football culture, if you don't want to be part of an athlete warrior culture, you can join the 65,000 people in the stands at LaVell Edwards Stadium. You could join the 50,000 people in the stands at Rice-Eccles Stadium. You could join the 75,000 people in the stands at your favorite NFL stadium. You could join the 100,000 fans in the stadium at the Big House. If you're willing and able to take it upon yourself to compete, part of what you're accepting is that you're going to do so when you're in pain. I was never a good enough college football player to compete on the field when I was less than 100%. My 100% was barely good enough to get on special teams in Division I football. So if I was less than 100%, they're just like, oh, no, just put somebody else in, right? When I moved on to a professional fighting career, do you know how many fights I had where I felt good? How many fights I had where I was 100%? How many fights where going into the second round, my coach was just like, you better get your ass up and move your head and block the next punch instead of chewing on it and spitting it out. That's part of being an athlete. That's part of being a competitor. That's why you get the scholarship and why you are paid the big bucks. If you want to complain about it after the fact, do it somewhere else to someone else. And let's not platform this in this way. Yes, it's convenient. Yes, you're going to get your clicks. Yes, you're going to get your reads. Jason Batakiao, my dog, you're really, really good at the job. This article, this subject, the way that this is framed as just a great opportunity to pile on the hatred that Kyle Whittingham is feeling from the state of Utah, from this Utah football community, this is not the right thing 6 days before the season kicks off. And I just gave it 30 minutes, which probably is also not the right thing on the Sean O'Connell Show. We'll take a break. We'll come back with the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley. I will probably ask him a question about this, but I won't make it too big of a thing. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show on a Friday. Welcome in the voice of the Utes, Bill Riley, who 6 days from now will be calling the first game of the season at Rice-Eccles Stadium, Idaho versus Utah. Conversations with Bill brought to you by friends over at Handy and Handy, handylawutah.com. Bill Riley, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
Sean, I'm good. Maybe do a little scouting of those Idaho Vandals a little bit later on this evening as they play the Mustangs of Cal Poly down in Southern California. But I'm ready to go. Let's go.
You got to see more of camp than all of us regular blokes in the media did. And there were a lot of questions heading into this one. What's the offensive line going to look like? Primarily the pressing one for the offense. On defense, you had to figure out what the pass rush is going to be, what the defensive interior is going to look like. There's questions at safety. I think that's a good answer one way or the other because you got 4 guys who can really play the position. Seeing what you saw and talking to who you talked to, how do you grade the preseason, if that's a thing, for Utah football?
Well, I don't know if I could put a grade on it because it was practice. And, you don't know till you get in game situations. But the concerns about the offensive line, I get it. I've said this about a million times since the season ended and everybody pointing at those. I didn't see it a lot in the spring, talking to coaches, watching fall camp. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be good. They're going to be fine. There was talent in the program already. There's more talent that was brought in through recruiting in the offseason. Good coaching in Jordan Gross. I think the offensive line for Utah is going to be good. Is it going to be generational like it was last year? Are they going to be second in the nation in rushing the football? I don't know about that. But I don't think that there's going to be a marked drop-off up front this year. I think it's going to be a good offensive line. Defensive line, there's a lot of guys there. It's one of those things, though, that you're not hitting quarterbacks. You're not doing as much of that stuff physically as you would in a game situation. So that's probably where I'm going to watch a lot on Thursday night when Idaho comes to town, just the rotations and who stands out on that defensive line because they've got a lot of bodies there. But they don't have a lot of bodies that have done it for Utah at a high level. Cash Dillon was a reserve last year that had some moments. Lance Holtzclaw had to play behind John Henry Daly, who was an All-American last year. Paul Fitzgerald was hurt last year. So Ethan Day was at North Texas last year. They brought in 3-4 new defensive tackles through the portal. But you've got a couple of young players who showed some nice flashes in Cepolona and Kafusi last year. So for me, I don't have much concern about that offensive line. And I don't have a lot of concern about the defensive line. I just want to see how that plays because it's a lot easier to rotate on the defensive line and guys can earn more snaps. You're going to go with your 5 guys on the offensive line, and those are your 5 guys. So of the 2 spots, I'm more anxious to see what the defensive line does than the offensive line.
Okay, so right or wrong, whatever happens this year is going to be looked at through the comparative lens. But, what Morgan does in his first year versus what we've had in the last 21 years. And for better or worse, we're going to hold up, the injury report and all these things. So, is this better or worse than it was before? With camp in the rear view now and a week or so of game prep going, those 2 guys are more similar than they are different as coaches, as people, but there are differences. Were those things noticeable to you out at camp when you were able to watch practice, based on conversation with players and assistant coaches? What are the major differences through the eyes of the voice of the Utes?
There's a different energy that Morgan brings and just the approach that they have. He wanders the field a little bit more, I think, than Kyle did. Kyle moved around a little bit. Morgan to be here 1 minute, then you look over there, he's gone. He's at a different point of the field. I really do, and maybe because I was up there just a lot more this year, the sports science side of things is something that Scally and this staff are really, really leaning heavily into. That sports science staff, they've beefed up that staff. It's been really interesting to watch and track and see how they're leaning in. not just analytically, which they're doing a lot of that with the new general manager, Joe DeRazio, and his staff, but on the sports science and strength and conditioning side of things, that's been a little bit different this year too. And I think that in that approach and the way they approach fall camp could really pay dividends as this season goes along.
Bill Riley is our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utes. As I am wont to do, I've been throwing out some over-unders regarding my predictions for this upcoming season, the statistical predictions. And one of the ones that intrigues me the most, that we had a good, robust conversation about with some of the listeners, is whether or not there's a double-digit sack man on the roster this year. Is there a John Henry Daly who, this time a year ago, most of us were not expecting John Henry Daly to be an All-American?
He
right?
had a 1 sack in 2024, Sean. He had 1 sack and played limited snaps. Nobody in their right mind would have predicted what John Henry Daly did before the season last year.
Which informs this question even more, right? Because like Lance Holtzclaw has a sack and a half, right? And a lot of people think that he is the next big thing. And you already made a great point about Cash Dillon. When he had reps, he made good use of those reps in live action. Ethan Day is a game wrecker at the North Texas level. Will he be at the Big 12 level? And a healthy Paul Fitzgerald has already showed us he can have 8 sacks for Utah State, so maybe a little extra weight room, a little extra coaching, and that 8 becomes 10. Is there a double-digit sack man on this year's roster?
I think there's a chance to be all 4 of those guys you mentioned. If I was a betting man, which of course I'm not, this is for entertainment purposes only, I would bet we have 4 of those guys that have between 5 and 8 sacks each. I would bet we have that, maybe Holtzclaw grabs 9, maybe Fitzgerald grabs 5, maybe Day grabs 7, maybe Cash Dillon has 7 or 8, which, by the way, if I'm in Okie Brechter Field, I might rather have that because that's producing me close to 40 sacks versus one guy that might get 11 and a half and one guy that might get 3. So I think there's a possibility. I certainly think somebody could, but I would bet you probably have 4 guys that have between 5 and 10 sacks between them each, more than one guy that's double digits.
Another stat that when I took a look at it again, it started to re-haunt me over last year because, look, this was an 11-2 football team last year, a really excellent year, but there were a couple games where even in wins, a lot of us felt sick in the pit of our stomach with how bad the run defense was. Utah finished 110th overall in the country in run defense when it was all said and done last year. So I lopped 60 yards a game off of what they gave up last year. And I said, can this team stay under 125.5 in yards surrendered on the ground to their opposition? There were only 4 games last year where they managed to keep the opposition under 125.5. If you're in that range, you're kind of top 30 in the country. I think that's where you need to be to stay competitive unless you have a crazy offense like they did last year. The larger question is, of course, about improving the run defense, but can they improve 50 or 60 yards over what they did last year in your mind?
Well, I think that goes to those guys we were talking about a minute ago, those tackles. They brought a lot of guys in like Moe and Samsula and Wallace to be space eaters up front, to eat up those blocks, to allow the linebackers like Reynolds and Hall and Paulu to kind of do the work behind them. So, I think they can. And to be fair, I mean, they didn't really get beat last year by teams that ran the ball down their throat. I mean, I know they gave up those yards in the K-State game, and they could have lost that, but they didn't lose to K-State. They gave up some big – the 2 games they lost, they were kind of beaten by quarterbacks in their legs. Bear Bachmeier made big plays with his legs in the BYU game. L.J. Martin wasn't the guy that beat Utah in that game. Utah beat itself, and Bachmeier made some nice runs. And to be fair, as good as a running game as Texas Tech had last year, the tiny back, I think it's Williams, Jacoby Williams, he had 1 long run, but Utah got beat by Will Hammond. It was Will Hammond scrambling with the football when he came in for the starting quarterback last year that was what beat Utah. So I think Utah, and the K-State game really skewed it badly, but I thought they were pretty good against the run most of the year, Sean, except quarterback scrambles. So you've got to be able to account for quarterbacks that can run. Houston's Connor Wegman can run the football. BYU's Bear Bachmeier can run the football. We'll see what some of these other quarterbacks have. Arkansas is probably going to have a quarterback that can run the football a little bit. So I think for me, it's when you're playing those mobile QBs, can you keep them from hurting you with their legs?
ESPN put out their list of the top 100 players in college football. No Utes in the preseason were named. Last year, obviously, you had Spencer Fano all over these types of lists, and I think it's okay to look at the roster now and to not put anyone in the top 100 of all great college football players. But if there is somebody who appears on that postseason list, who would that be?
I think Devin Dampier is the easy answer to that, because if Devin takes another step, I mean, he was newcomer of the year in the Big 12 last year. And as we have found out subsequently, he was playing hurt much of the season last year. So to have the kind of production he had and in the condition he was physically shows, one, his toughness, but two, what kind of a gamer he is. So I think the easy answer to that is Devin Dampier. I will throw another guy out there. I think Jackson Benny has a chance to be that guy. I think he flashed some of that last year. He's got great ball instincts, and I think Benny could be a playmaking type of guy too. I think Wayshawn Parker will have a big year, but there's so many good running backs. There's just so many good not just in the Big 12, but in the country, that it's hard unless you're having a huge year. And maybe if you play in big games, maybe if he pops against a Houston or a BYU or an Arizona in some of those games, you certainly get on that list. But I would say Dampier is probably the easy answer with how dynamic he can be and the weapons at his disposal this year. But I think Jackson Benny might be a sneaky guy on that list too.
Bill Riley for another couple of minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things Utah football. As you get ready for Idaho, look, respect to the Vandals, but these games are what they are. It's supposed to be a tune-up for Utah. It's supposed to be an opportunity for you to get your actual game speed and your playing legs under you. What is going to look like a successful outing, in your opinion?
Well, one, you're healthy. You come out of that game healthy, and there aren't any major sort of issues or injuries. But two, I think I said this with Spence, and I think I've said it on my podcast. Are your lines of scrimmage, where people have some questions about you right now, offensive and defensive lines, can you control those lines of scrimmage? You're playing a 1AA program that's middle of the pack in their conference. That's a good conference. Big Sky's a good conference. But there's not a lot of expectation for Idaho Vandal football this year. So at your house, with a lot of talent coming back, can you go and do what you need to do, and that's own the lines of scrimmage against a team like Idaho? Because to me, if you're able to do that, you're doing what you're supposed to do as Utah football. You'll get a much better test that second week against Arkansas that, again, not highly touted this year in the SEC, but they're going to bring in SEC caliber athletes. But how do you look in the trenches, and do you control the lines of scrimmage? And if you do that, final score, whether it's 28-7 or 63-0, whatever that doesn't mean as much to me. But can you control the lines of scrimmage? Can you protect the football? And can you get out of there healthy? That's what it is to me. What about you?
Well, yeah, I think you hit all the main points here. I'm also curious about whoever the starting five on the offensive line are against Idaho. Do we see them for the whole game, or will the experimentation continue on that line of scrimmage, on the offensive line of scrimmage especially? Because rotation on the defensive line of scrimmage is a natural thing. Most of the time you want your same five until, mop-up time when it comes to the starting O-line. But I'm getting conflicting reports on just how settled those battles are, and I want to know if Jordan Gross and company are going to be like, all right, first quarter it's you guys, second quarter it's you guys, because you could kind of afford to do that against Idaho, not so much against Arkansas or probably even Utah State.
No, I don't think you're going to experiment. I think you're going to pick your five, and then you're going to say you're playing 2 quarters or you're playing 2.5 quarters together, because I think you want those guys in sync. And once you're done with whatever their snap count is, or however long that might happen to be, 2.5, 3 quarters, then you're getting them out of there, and you're getting some of those other guys some experience, because you and I both know the odds are of all 5 offensive linemen playing every snap of every game together for 12 games, maybe 13, maybe 14 or more is pretty rare. So you probably want to get some of those other guys behind those starters some game experience. But I would be surprised, and I've not talked to Jordan about what the rotations are going to look like, but I would be surprised if they're intermixing starters and reserves. I would think once you pick your 5 guys, you want to just get them as many reps together as you possibly can.
How will you handle the week 0 slate? Because, you're all in on football for the next 12 plus. So do you use this one as you get to go fishing one last time, or how do you treat week 0?
No, I'm going to watch some football. Maybe a little Idaho, Cal Poly tonight to do a little advanced scout. Little San Jose State, USC, perhaps tomorrow on NBC. Maybe catch a little, was it UNLV Hawaii tomorrow night? Now, I want to soak a little football in. I've been waiting for this. Preseason pro football doesn't do anything for me, Sean, because it just doesn't mean anything and no starters play. You're going to see starters playing in all these games, but especially that Idaho-Cal Poly game, just so I can put my eyeballs on Josh Wood and DeMonte Bias and Ferrari Miller and some of these guys from Idaho who we'll see on Thursday. By the way, that's a tough back-to-back for the Vandals.
Yeah.
You've got to open on the road against, it's not like Cal Poly's not a juggernaut, but then you have a short week to go to play in Salt Lake City. That's not easy.
A big picture question for you, and it's been dominating the storylines earlier in the week, not so much today. Will we have a guy or multiple guys that were in training camp with an NFL team or did OTAs or appeared at a preseason game or any of that? Will any of those people actually play college football because of a temporary restraining order or an injunction or anything else in 2026?
I don't think so. I mean, the leagues have come out pretty strongly against this. I mean, the SEC, the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, some of the Group of Fives, they're all saying they don't want this. And if some of the threats by some of these conference commissioners are true, do you want to really risk that? Do you want a judge to rule in your favor and then have another judge overrule it, and then you're fined $500,000 and have to sit out 4 or 5 games? I understand. I don't approve of it, but I understand why guys like Kiffin do it. The old thought, if I don't do it, somebody else might. Plus, Kiffin coached DeQuan Wright last year at Ole Miss, so I get that a little bit too. But I think we need to remove this loophole from the game. I think we just need to pull this loophole and say, no. You've made the effort. You decided to declare to go pro. The eligibility is what it was, but you chose to do that. You're not able to come back to college football. So I don't think we'll see that. I think we're too close to the season. I think it would cause too much distraction. Plus, some of these guys, then they have to come in and learn a playbook. What kind of a distraction does that bring into your locker room? So, yeah, I would highly doubt it. You think we'll see one?
I don't think we see any. What about in basketball? Obviously, Utah, disappointing news with the Noam Yakov situation.
Yeah.
Jackson Kohler at BYU, his future now up in the air because of all this stuff. What do you think in basketball?
Well, we've seen LSU again in on the mix with the guy that was the former St. John's player that was on the Jazz roster for a minute, Luis. I think it's more likely we see it in basketball because there's more opportunities and there's a little bit more time. I just think we're too close to the college football season now, but we're still 2 months away from the start of college basketball, so that wouldn't surprise me as much. But I hope it doesn't happen. At some point, Sean, we have to draw the line in the sand that is actually a permanent line. It's not something that can be moved. It's not a chalk line. It's a painted line, a line that can't be just brushed away and readjusted. So I hope we don't see this. We've got enough issues that we're dealing with to add this another new layer to it. It just seems like more I don't know. It just seems like more than we need to have at this point in time.
Our conversations with Bill Riley are brought to you by Handy and Handy, HandyLawUtah.com. Bill, tell the people what they need to know about Handy and Handy.
Good personal injury attorneys located right here in Utah that will take really, really good care of you, whether it's you or a loved one that's been hurt in an accident at work or whatever it might happen to be. Preston and Garrett Handy have been doing this thing for 40 years plus combined, and they'll take great care of you. I hope you don't have to call them, but if you need that personal injury attorney, they can help you out at Handy and Handy.
Bill, 6 days away. We'll see you up there at Rice Eccles. Thanks for your time.
That'd be great, Sean. See you soon.
That's Bill Riley, voice of the Utes. And before you jump on me on the Twitter or the text line for not asking a question about what we opened the show talking about, Bill Riley is now officially an employee of the university. He's at the University of Utah, and it was going to be a no comment anyway. All right? So we assessed that before we jumped on the air, and it's a waste of time to even put the question out when all he can say is no comment. So that's why we didn't address the Jason Batakiao article about players allegedly being pressured to play while injured at the University of Utah during the Kyle Whittingham era. Also, chocolate milk and molasses cookies are delicious. I mean, we're telling you things that you already knew, okay? We love Oreos. All of Camp Scally coverage is available on our ESPN700sports.com, on the ESPN 700 app. SenXL, JBR, Beer Bar, Citra, Cooperman, Big O Tires, Sound Warehouse, Utah Toyota dealers. They have made it possible for us to gather and compile all that sound for you. It's on the website. It's on the app. And our conversation with Bill Riley will be up shortly as well. We're going to double up here. So we'll double the breaks. Carlos Mauricio Ramirez from NFL International is going to join us. We'll talk maybe a little RSL with him. He does some MLS stuff also. But Carlos in 3 minutes. Well, more like 5. It's the Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.
Ni que camisa, weón. ¿98 centroamericanos en Maracaibo? 29. Claro. Tírale coñacito.
Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Welcome in Carlos Mauricio Ramirez. Jack of all trades, master of every single one of them. You can hear him on NFL International, MLS, on English and on Spanish calls now. Carlos, welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. Thank you for the introduction. Happy to be here again.
So what's wrong with our RSL squad? They have not won an MLS match since May. They got $15 million for selling Gozo, and everyone's waiting to see how that's going to be deployed to help this roster. But it was such a hot start, and they've gone ice cold.
Yeah, well, first thing is you mentioned Gozo. They sold him. So whenever you sell your best player, you're going to suffer. No matter what team it is, it could be Real Madrid, Barcelona, or Real Salt Lake. When you sell an asset like Xavier Gozo, your team will feel it. And then when a player that was producing at a high level like Zach Booth gets hurt in that same spot, then you're in scramble mode. And then when you have two fronts like Leagues Cup and MLS simultaneously, and you don't have the depth to withstand the rigors of both competitions, then the problems just pile up. I think Real Salt Lake has a really good team on paper. I mean, with injuries like the Aripiol injury, the Anelli injury, now the Zach Booth, which you cannot control or, budget for. But when you look at the completion or the totality of the roster, I see first of all, I think you have one of the greatest coaches in MLS. Pablo Mastroeni is a football or soccer savant. He knows what he's doing. Gozo is the evidence of that. And then I think Hazarkani is turning back into shape, recovering from the injury. You have a wealth of homegrown, young, Utah-based talent like Hazarkani who are making their strides in Major League Soccer. Gozo is the latest example. So I think it's a combination of bad luck, which comes in the shape of injuries, being, to a degree, a victim of your own success in being able to qualify to the next round of Leagues Cup. Then you lost the game to Leon, which I understand. But honestly, it's just that. I think it's bad luck, injuries, the selling or the sell of departure of Gozo. Some players underperforming. I think Victor Olatunji, I'm concerned about. Here's a guy who has scored 8 goals in Champions League and is nowhere to be seen as your backup 9 who should be fighting for your starting 9 spot against Sergi Solans. There's continuity issues because of the rotation. So, but I see a really good team. When the squad is healthy and you can depend on just that's the skeleton, the base skeleton of the team, I think it's a very competitive team with a couple of additions, maybe another 9 perhaps. And I think a right side winger to replace Gozo would do wonders for this squad as well.
A lot of the, headlining moments, a lot of the headlining goals have been a product of Gozo's mastery and Diego Luna being a finisher and things like that. When you take a Pippen away from Jordan or a Jordan away from Pippen or whatever, I think, we fail to recognize how costly that can be for your other best player when now a lot of the defensive pressure is applied in one spot.
Yeah, and it's a great point. A player that I think what I've seen from him is encouraging is Lineker Rodriguez. Here's a young guy who you did inform. He's not Utah native, but he's now spent, I would think, enough time with the team that he understands what the tactics demand from Pablo. So far he's been used as another 10. But in that scheme, you only need two. You need a left 10 and a right 10. Left side is Diego's. He's using Gilavogi as the right side 10, and that's where Lineker plays. I wonder, and that was Gozo's spot before he got played back into the wing back spot on the right side. I guess I wonder if at some point, with Booth being out, that spot usually goes to DeAndre Yatling, but he's 33 and a different kind of player. I wonder if Lineker would be an option at some point to play that right-hand wing back spot and replace Gozo. And then you would have three backs, whether it's Junko or Arias or Quentin or whoever you want to play in the back on the three-back line. And then you have Lineker would be that right winger with any combination of Ruiz or Spearings or Caliscan or whoever you want to play in the middle when Anelli comes back, and then Sanabria plays the left side, and then you have your structure with Gilavogi, Luna, and Sergio Solans up top.
All right, switching gears, if you don't mind, a little bit to the NFL, because obviously you wear that hat sometimes. And NFL International now, you're in Miami instead of San Francisco. Is that correct?
Yes. I just moved I actually drove from San Francisco to Miami, a grueling, mind-challenging endeavor from San Jose to Miami. Yes, I'm now based out east in Florida.
That is a long drive. As we march towards those week one games, and every team kind of wraps up their preseason, is there any squad or any storyline that has captured your attention in this sort of weird final week of not real football before we get to the good stuff?
I guess Cleveland, right? I mean, what the hell are they doing? It's Deshaun Watson. It's Deshaun Watson. It's when you have two quarterbacks, you have none. And I would have thought they would have gone with Shadur just to know really what they have in him. I understand it's easier to go to the older quarterback first. If he doesn't work, you shift back to the young guy and shift. That might be the case. But if they're talented, just not there. The worst place you can be in the NFL is mediocre. I mean, in between, like a 9-8, an 8-9, an 8-10, 7-10 team, which they could be. But if I would have started Shedeur just to know what I have, and if we tank, we tank, and then you go get Manning. But I have no idea what they're doing in the QB spot. It's a great question, and that, to me, that's a fascinating one. We'll see what happens.
Last thing, and I know we got to let you go, but that was going to be my next question. College football starts week 0 this weekend, and then obviously we're off and running next week in earnest. And as you're looking at college football through the NFL lens, which players are you watching for that top draft spot in the 2026-2027 cycle?
Because I have to go, I'll give you a one-word answer. Manning. I'm out.
All right, that's good enough for us. Thanks for the time. Carlos Mauricio Ramirez, NFL International, MLS on Apple TV, and a friend of the program who is now, a drive from San Francisco all the way to Miami. Cross country, for real. That's a rough one. I appreciate him giving his thoughts on the RSL situation. I was in the building. We went and watched last week when RSL battled all the way back against Dallas. They go down early. They battled back, even it up at 3-3, and then with no time left on the clock. In fact, it was the very beginning of extra time. Just allowed the most little league. My best player is better than your best player. He's just going to take it from the corner, dribble around 3 guys, and put it in the back of the net type goal. And that ended up a 4-3 loss. And since then, it's been lost 2-1 to Orlando, the aforementioned Leagues Cup loss to Lyon, and tomorrow night it is Colorado and Real Salt Lake at Dick's Sporting Goods Park in Colorado. So After that, the next home game, September 5th at America First Field against LAFC. Hope to see this squad get back on track after losing some momentum post-World Cup. Tough stuff to deal with. All right, so Carlos, I wanted to pick his brain a little bit more about the rising talents in college football as it pertains to these NFL rosters, because you're going to see that conversation happening around college football where, there's the Trinidad Chamblises of the world, there's the Arch Mannings of the world, the Julian Sayans of the world. These top quarterbacks in college football then become the top targets in NFL football. These NFL teams that are going to kind of figure it out in the first 4 to 6 weeks, whether or not they have anything. And beyond that, you're potentially racing toward the bottom, as we saw in the NBA for so many years with the Utah Jazz. You're racing toward the bottom to try to get yourself the best draft position and the best draft pick. I don't know that we are super clear yet on who that's going to be. Now, Arch Manning's name is obviously rising to the top of many, many lists because his last name is Manning. And the low-hanging fruit, and you've heard this question asked by every radio guy in the world already, is if his name was Arch Johnson or Arch Jones or Arch Chambliss, would his star be rising the same way? Would people be talking about him the same way? And the obvious answer is no. But because he's Arch Manning and because people see the flashes and the glimmer of, that dynasty of quarterback play, they feel like it's lower risk to go in on, hey, Arch Manning's going to be that guy. Texas obviously felt like it was low risk to go in on Arch Manning being that guy. I think he's an awesome athlete. I think he's got a great arm. I think that it's completely unfair to expect him to be either of his uncles when they're both Super Bowl winners. They're both Hall of Famers. Peyton obviously is thought of on another tier even than Eli is, but Eli had an insane amount of success at both the college and the pro levels. And then you go all the way back to Grandpa. And so you're being expected to carry this forward. We have some version of that at our local universities, right? Our local schools. You've got like the Ellises now at the University of Utah. By the way, at Idaho before, the older Ellis brothers were Idaho guys, University of Idaho guys that are now killing it in the NFL. Obviously, Dad Luther was a great player for the University of Utah before relocating to Idaho, and then the younger brothers ended up being part of this Utah football roster. Both, well, not just both. I think Southern Utah, Weber State, Utah State, Utah, and BYU have all fielded one or more Kaufusi at some point. Andrew,
I would agree. Kaufusi's everywhere.
The Kaufusis, and it's a big clan, right? There's a lot of offshoots. There's cousins. But I think every one of them has had a Kaufusi, and most of them have had a Kaufusi on the staff as well as on the field.
Yeah.
Right? So we get some version of this. The Glaskers are at BYU right now. You've got a bunch of the Hannemans have rolled through BYU. It's a family affair in a lot of these Utah and BYU football rosters. The same is true with Utah State. But it's a wildly different animal when we're talking about National Football League royalty, when we're talking about what Arch Manning is dealing with and what the NFL and everyone who watches both college football and NFL football are doing in judging that player, in judging Arch Manning specifically.
Yeah, I have a question about this, because to me, just from maybe an outsider's perspective on Manning, it feels a little bit like Shedeur Sanders a couple years ago. He's a good player, but maybe the media is more in love with him than the actual GMs are going to be. Do you think that could happen where the media is just all over Manning, and the GMs are like, hold a minute, we'll take him a few rounds later? I
actually think you bring up an interesting question, and I think it's a decent one to ask. I think it's going to go the opposite way. I think that, so what happened with Shedeur, and look, the GMs are kind of being proven right so far. What happened with Shedeur is he was an unbelievable playmaker in college football. Like, as unlikable as any college football athlete that we've ever seen, but as a playmaker, especially at the lower level, and then when he went to Colorado with the right receivers, he didn't have the right offensive line, he didn't have the right run game, he didn't have the right defense. He had great wide receivers, and he had his own ability. He was wildly talented. He was so dang good, right? Like painfully, obnoxiously in some situations. And I think that because of the way that his public persona was out there, the way that his dad's public persona has been out there for decades, and the way that, his brother's legal troubles and all these things, I think that people looked at Shedeur and they were just like, that's a mess waiting to happen for us. If you just take his football in a vacuum, he's not a first-round draft pick. He's not the number 1 overall pick. But if you just take his football in a vacuum, you're just like, holy cow, this kid's got something. He's got a crazy live arm. I mean, the problem is when your name is Shedeur Sanders and you are very publicly, outwardly forward-facing the equally cocky son of the cockiest player that's ever been in the NFL, you put yourself into different conversations from a comparison standpoint. Instead of being like, hey, this guy's a good second, third, fourth round draft pick, the NFL was just like, he thinks he's the number 1 overall draft pick. His talent says he's a third rounder, which for me does like a reverse multiplier and drops him all the way to the 5th or the 6th round because I don't want to deal with the trouble. I think Arch Manning will be treated in an opposite manner. I think because he has been such a consummate professional, he has been probably, if we're being honest, he's been like falsely humble in a lot of, like, I think he's been trained to be outwardly humble when quarterbacks are not humble. Peyton Manning is not humble. Eli Manning is not humble. They are not supposed to be humble, but they have that aw shucks kind of thing about them. And Arch carries himself the same way. So let's say that Arch has exactly Shedeur Sanders' film. And of course he won't. But if he had exactly Shedeur Sanders' film, I think Arch gets treated better by the NFL than Shedeur was. And Shedeur is. Because optics are everything. Expectation is everything. And if you think as an NFL GM, as a coach, you're inheriting a headline and a headache instead of a player who's going to put his head down and work. Shedeur puts his head down and works. Nobody, even his biggest detractors, his biggest haters, nobody was out there saying that Shedeur Sanders doesn't put in the time to master the craft of being a quarterback. He likes the flashy stuff about it. He likes the watches. He likes the cars. He likes the interviews. He likes to be like the guy that people talk about. Arch, to be determined. Seems like he doesn't necessarily love it as much, but it's the optics. Some people will say it's racially different. Some people will say it's culturally different. What it is one guy's dad is the Manning that didn't end up playing in the NFL, so they judge him by his uncles instead of his dad. The other guy's dad is Deion Bleepin Sanders, who has never met a camera he doesn't want to talk to, right? So these GMs come to that with a frame of reference, with a judgment standpoint, consciously or subconsciously, where they're just like, oof. Shedeur had to be damn near perfect as a football player for people to want everything else that came with Shedeur. And he wasn't. He's a flawed football player. He's a flawed quarterback. Arch Manning could be equally flawed, but he'll be given the benefit of the doubt instead of punished for all of that extracurricular stuff, in my opinion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. So the GMs had to kind of hedge their bets with Shedeur, essentially.
Yeah.
Because of all the risks that comes with the publicity with him.
Yeah, Shedeur is, and I wish, I've said this so many times, I actually wish that I think Deion is like so many of us, he is the dad that just has a blind spot specifically for his kids. I think that he's the right coach for a lot of the other guys that went and played at the University of Colorado. A lot of guys that he would deliberately talk about it. Guys who didn't have a father figure at home. He wanted to be that. He wanted to, especially for African-American young men who came from backgrounds similar to his own, he wanted to, bring those guys under his wing and teach them kind of his way. And it might not be everyone's right way, but his way made sense, right? He's a very outwardly faithful type person. He wanted it to be a Christian type atmosphere. He wanted God to be a big part of people's lives. He was forcing that or pressing that onto players. I think for a lot of players that was a good thing. I think that Deion, teaching guys what the NFL was going to be about while they were in college was exactly what a lot of these young men were looking for in their environment. And I think that he had a certain level of accountability in his program that a lot of guys, especially guys that were going to the Jackson States of the world, didn't necessarily expect. But his own sons, he did not do that to, and he did not do that with. And we haven't talked about this a ton on the show because I think people have primetime fatigue. He's getting summons to court and subpoenas to go testify in not Shador's case, but Shiloh's case, Shiloh's legal cases, because his son beat somebody up at school, a staff member at school when he was in high school, and got sued and had to file bankruptcy. He's got an $11 million bankruptcy filing situation that Deion has to be a part of, and he's being called to court, testify in court during the football season.
Yeah, that's not going to go great for Colorado.
It's not going to go great for Colorado. And also, if you're in the NFL, if you're an NFL GM or if you're an NFL franchise, you're just I don't know, man.
Yeah, you've got 52 other players that also generate headlines. You can't have one that's going over the top.
What kind of other stuff are we doing here? Because, again, Shador just doesn't do himself any favors because a lot of guys don't want to talk to the media, and that's totally fine. They treat people respectfully when they don't want to talk to the media. I don't want to paint with a blanket brush here. The media day experiences we had with Deion was great. Travis Hunter was great. Shador was a pain in the ass. Was a jerk to everybody. And again, that's anecdotal. I'm only speaking from my own experience, but I also talked to a lot of people who had the same experience, right? So it's okay. You can fake it. It's very, very easy to be a fake, likable person. You know what it's supposed to look like. He didn't do that. And I think it hurt him in the NFL, and it's still hurting him in the NFL to some extent. I pulled up the Shador Sanders pro stats. I need to find his college stats. Arch Manning is coming off a season at Texas. Remember, this is his fourth year at Texas now. He's coming off a season at Texas where he had 3,163 yards, 26 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That by itself is a pretty dang good season. If you gave anybody those numbers who wasn't named Arch Manning, everyone would be like, okay, that's a solid year for your quarterback. 61% is not the completion percentage I'm looking for. I need that to be closer to 65, 70. We'd probably look at it and be like, all right, cool. But it's not good enough when it's Arch Manning. And now that lens doesn't just get focused on expectations for his Texas career. It's also going to be a dual examination of, okay, what is he in next year's draft? His running ability, his athleticism, his arm, his processing speed, all of those things come into even more hyper-focus because teams want Arch Manning to be near the top of the draft. They want what we hope is true about him to be true about him. They want a Manning. It's a low-risk proposition for any GM, any coach. If you're at the top of the draft, if you're in the top 5, and you select a quarterback named Manning, your fan base is going to be like, I like that. I like that. That's a good pick. I don't know. Got to take a break here. Sean O'Connell Show continues with the Daily Dump. A potpourri of stories, including maybe, just maybe, a solution to the Utah Mammoth backup goalkeeper situation. It's Utah's number one sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Time for the Daily Dump, brought to you by Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. The truck with the duck has all the solutions for you with drain cleaning, with plumbing. You need a new faucet installed. They can handle a small little job like that. If you need a brand new sewer line, they can also take care of you on the heavy work front. Look for the truck with the duck. Go to valleyplumbinghvac.com. Make an appointment online without even having to pick up the phone. Tell them OC sent you. All right, Utah Mammoth fans, we're still a couple months away from where this team needs to be talked about in earnest, but would you support Bill Armstrong and company being hyper-aggressive and trying to solve your goaltender problem? And when I say goaltender problem, I mean your backup goaltender problem. Veggie was the most active in the entire league last year. He played more games than any other goaltender in the league. He is a grinder. This is a guy who was, there were 12 and 13 game stretches where he did not get any rest. And part of that was because there was not a ton of trust from Coach Bear and the rest of the front office that your backup was going to be any good. Now, Veggie was supposed to be the backup when he arrived, and obviously the Connor Ingram mental health situation became a thing. Veggie stepped up, did everything that he was asked, and he became your bona fide number one goaltender. He became a guy that I think the fans kind of rally behind. He needs help. You need a better backup goaltender in this Mammoth pipeline, or not just in the pipeline, on the big league roster, on the NHL roster, and you need it now. You made the playoffs last year. You want to win some playoff series. You probably need to make sure that Veggie is not fading at the end of the season. And they did not lose the playoff series to the Vegas Golden Knights because of Veggie, but the point stands that you still need to fix that. Well, one of the biggest names in NHL goaltending has requested a trade out of Winnipeg, and Connor Hellebuyck is now available on the open trade market. Most of the publications that are looking for his next landing spot are not even mentioning the Utah Mammoth. But I think what this does is it potentially creates a domino effect where you probably don't end up with Hellebuyck. I don't even think you want to end up with Hellebuyck, because then it's one of those like two quarterback situations. You got two starting goalies. You don't want two starting goalies. You want there to be a pretty clear pecking order, at least for now. He's probably going to end up in Buffalo, or heaven forbid he ends up with San Jose. I don't think San Jose wants to mortgage any of their young talent to try and acquire him. If you're Winnipeg, you would demand that they do that. No one's getting Macklin Celebrini out of there, but the supporting cast is going to be important for San Jose to terrorize the West, and including the Utah Mammoth, for the coming years. I think the more likely outcome here is that, like, let's say he ends up in Buffalo, or he ends up in Carolina, or he ends up in one of these places. I hope he ends up in the East. He ends up in one of these places that feels like they're a goalie away from either another Stanley Cup or real Stanley Cup contention. To be clear, Utah does not feel like they are a goalie away. They feel like they have their guy. The contract and the extension that they gave to Veggie indicates as such. But if somebody else goes out and gets Hellebuyck, that's going to shuffle a deck in another position room, right? Another franchise's position room. And if you're not confident in your young pipeline coming from Tucson and other places for Utah, for the Utah Mammoth, then maybe some of that trickle-down effect ends up freeing up, another veteran goaltender who can give you 30 games a year and allow for Veggie to have a more rested season in 2026, 2027 than he had last year. But it's something that really interestingly that, Hellebuyck, he is the Team USA goaltender. He's a guy that at his very best can be the best in the entire league. Didn't have a great statistical year last year. He was actually 23-23 as the starter for Winnipeg. He was Veggie was statistically a better goaltender than Connor Hellebuyck was. if that matters to you. Apparently, he made this trade request privately to Winnipeg a long time ago, months and months ago. And because the season is approaching and things are kind of ramping up and reporting is getting a lot more aggressive, especially on the Canadian hockey front, he went to his own social media and released his own statement saying, like, look, I tried to do this in the most respectful way, but it is time for me to move on. I did submit a trade request. And, that it's a heartbreaker for some Winnipeg fans. Others have wanted him out of there. So, Hellebuck on the move. What does it do for the goalie situation around the league? What does it do for the Mammoth? We'll keep an eye on it. Andrew, are you a card collector of any kind? Do you collect? You're a young chap. What are you, like 19?
I'm 23.
You're 23?
Yeah.
Okay. Are you into the ripping the packs? Are you collecting cards?
I've never actually been a card collector. It kind of fascinates me from a distance, but I've never collected cards.
So I did when I was a kid. I have not jumped back into the hobby. We talk about it on the show a lot because I'm like you. I get kind of fascinated when you see these crazy stories. We talked a couple weeks ago about the Cooper Flag 1-of-1 rookie debut patch card that was pulled out of a pack. It was pulled out of a pack in Rhode Island that somebody in North Carolina actually owned the card because of. Did you hear about this?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll explain it to you again because it's fascinating to me. This is apparently a way that things are done in the hobby, like the elite level hobby card collecting. So there's a company, there's several of these, but there was a company called in Rhode Island that their whole thing is they do like live streams of them opening boxes of cards, and they get the fancy hobby boxes that are like $1,000 to buy, right? If you want, or if I want, or if anyone wants, they can go when this box of cards is going to be opened, they can say, all right, I'm going to buy the rights to all of the Dallas Mavericks card out of that box, or all the Utah Jazz cards, or all the San Antonio Spurs cards, or all the 49ers cards, that's my team, out of this box. So you pay like $200 or $50 or $100 or whatever, and then you get the rights to whatever team that you just paid for. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So some guy in North Carolina paid $500 to have all the Dallas Mavericks cards out of this box, hoping for this one card to get pulled. The 1-of-1 rookie debut Cooper Flag, which is projected to be the best card in this season, this cycle. I was like, okay. Now, the equivalent card to this that sold last year at a similar auction, this is going to be auctioned off next month, and it's going to be Fanatics Collect. It's a Gem Mint 10 1-of-1 autograph debut Topps Chrome rookie card will be auctioned off on its platform. That in itself was the sweepstakes. All of these auction houses wanted to be the one to auction this thing off. Fanatics Collect gets the opportunity to do it. The owner still has not touched the card. He has not seen the card in like a physical form. He has not had it in his hands, which is wild to me. But it has been verified. It is real. It is now, the auction house has it. They're going to sell it. The equivalent to this card from last year's class was, or I guess it would be 2 years ago now, was Victor Wembanyama. The equivalent to this sold. Do you want to know how much the Victor Wembanyama version of this card sold for?
Yeah.
$5.1 million.
That's insane to me.
So, update on a story we gave you in the Daily Dump a couple weeks back. The Cooper Flag projected price is $3.5 million plus.
You taking the over or under?
I'm taking the under. Well,
see,
I should take the under. I should take the over because Cooper Flag, he's not quite as hyped as Victor Wembanyama. He's not living up to the hype quite the same way that Victor Wembanyama, but it's close.
I'll say I would take the under just because he's smashed between Wemby and the AJ and Darren Peterson. That they're just so close together. I wonder if that decreases the value.
I'm going to start I'm going to start buying my way into these boxes of cards with the Utah Jazz stuff to try to get the Darren Peterson 1/1.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to do that with the AJ DeBonsa, although I bet I could sell that card for a pretty penny to like Ryan Smith or something.
Yeah.
By the way, the owner of the 1/1 Cooper Flag card, he was offered a lot of money by the Dallas Mavericks they wanted to buy the card. I guess to put it in the stadium or something. I don't know what. Like, if you're the franchise, you have the player. You like, why do you need the card of the player? You have the player. Why are you buying his collector cards? But anyway, the Dallas Mavericks gave him like a pretty fancy offer, and he said no, and he's putting it up for auction. It says, let's see here. A Paul Skeens version of the same card fetched $1.1 million last year. That's reasonable. $1 million for a card? That's a heck of a lot better than $5 million.
See, this is why these headlines are why the card collecting just fascinates me, because I cannot imagine. I mean, obviously, I'm 23 and college student broke as can be. I cannot imagine spending $1,000 on a card, much less millions of dollars on a card. Like it just, that level of hobby is crazy.
Here's another crazy thing. So the Victor Wembanyama, it was a Panini Prism Black card, okay? Sold for $5.11 million in a private sale via this same auction site, Fanatics Collect. All right? It's the most ever spent on the Wembanyama card. It's the fourth most ever spent on a basketball card, which means there's been 3 cards that someone paid more than $5 million for. It's the 11th most expensive sports card ever. 10 people have paid more than $5 million for a single sports card. That's crazy to me. Previous to that one being sold, the most expensive Victor Wembanyama card that had ever come out was $860,000. So you more than 5x'd on the Victor Wembanyama, the second one that rolled around that big. So if you're a Cooper Flag fan, if you're a Cooper Flag believer, you think that there's probably significant upside to this one in this auction.
Yeah.
Just insane to me.
Yeah, if you think, see that is the crazy thing, is the person who's buying this for $3.5 million probably is thinking that they can get, they're doing this so that they can sell it for $7 million 5 years down the road.
I will say this. I'm all for people spending their money how they want to spend their money. But if you spend $5 million on a trading card, you should like make yourself donate another $5 million to charity or something.
See, the Andrew Peterson Foundation is open for business. Helping Andrew Peterson's all around the ESPN radio station.
It's just specifically for Andrew Petersons who also work on the Utah ESPN radio affiliates.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's a very narrow focus of that charity, Andrew.
It can be used in other ways for Andrew Peterson's all around the station.
So I'm gonna see if I can follow this Fanatics Collect auction that's happening, and we'll see if we can get the final number on the Cooper Flag card. Also, pulling one of these cards is equivalent to winning a lottery. So that's another reason why card collecting might become either more appealing or more problematic, depending on who you are. That's the Daily Dump here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Brought to you by our friends over at Valley Plumbing, Heating, and Cooling. We got a PGA Tour leaderboard update for you next. Andrew, that's you. Did James tell you? When we do the PGA Tour leaderboard updates, you have to tell us what the leaderboard looks like.
Well, that'll be interesting.
Are you aware of this?
I was not aware of this.
Well, now you are. You got a commercial break to figure it out. It's the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. All right, before JT Wistersill joins us in the 1 o'clock hour, we'll give you a PGA Tour leaderboard update from the Tour Championship. These updates are brought to you by You Went to Golf. Unlock your game at Golfdom by Worldwide Golf. New low prices on Ping G440 woods and irons. The G440 driver delivers faster ball speeds along with game-changing forgiveness and is now $170 off at You Went to Golf locations all up and down the Wasatch Front and online at Worldwide Golf. All right, let's give this a shot. What does the leaderboard look like at the Tour Championship?
So we've got the leaderboard pulled up on the PGAtour.com.
Okay.
It says that Cameron Young is in first at -8.
All right.
Tied with Minwoo Lee. So they're both tied for first. Then we've got 4 players tied at third. Jacob Bridgerman, Sam Burns. That's a difficult name. Akshay Bhatia.
Yeah, Akshay Bhatia, okay. Yes.
And Chris
that'll
Goddard.
sneak up on you. That'll get you.
That's -7. It's ironic that I'm doing this, given that the highest level of golf I've ever played is Wii Golf.
Okay. So this is lovely because I am also not a golf guy, right? Like,
yeah.
At some point, you're still young enough that it's fully acceptable for you to not be a golf guy yet because your body is young and you can play other sports.
Right.
When you get to my age, everyone's just like, dude, golf. It's the only thing you have. You have to play golf. You have to golf. And I'm just like, guys, I like to go out to the golf course with my friends so I can hang out with my friends, but I'm a terrible golfer. I'm the worst golfer that you will ever find. And as such, I have a hard time being in love with watching golf.
Right.
So we always do this where I throw the leaderboard update to James or whoever's behind the glass because that person is always more of a golf person than I am. But right now we have 2 non-golf guys.
I think here's the thing is I think you're more of a golf guy than I am. I've never even been out to a course.
Okay.
I went to Top Golf once and I actually won. This is the funny story.
No, you didn't.
I did. And here's why. I don't know how to swing a golf club. I was with guys that were just swinging stuff all over the place and just sending it way out there. I had this like Charles Barkley type golf swing where I was like right before the ball, made sure I hit it and just flung it off.
Okay.
And it went to like the closest hole every time. The other guys are just swinging away and they're missing. I was like, wow, I am by far the worst golfer with the best score here.
They're hitting for distance and missing the target, and you were just playing for average.
I just wanted something.
All right. I can appreciate that.
Anyways.
So Cam Young and Minwoo Lee sitting at the top of the leaderboard. Look, all of you out there listening are better golfers than me and than Andrew. So get to your local You Into Golf outlet. Go to worldwidegolf.com and unlock your game. New low prices on the Ping G440 woods and irons. $170 off. That is, well, it tells you 2 things. If it's a $170 discount, that is an expensive club. That thing has a lot of technology loaded into it, so it's going to improve your golf game. But you also kind of can't afford to let a $170 discount run away from you. So do it now. Head to You Into Golf and tell them OC sent you. And you can also tell them Andrew sent you. And neither of us will be joining you on the golf course anytime soon, right, Andrew?
Absolutely not.
I will be joining. So I told you guys this was going to happen. Currently at my house, if you went to my backyard right now, you would smell a delightful hickory and cherry pellet mix. On my Traeger at this moment is a big old 18.5-pound brisket. All right?
I'll be there.
Also, and I know that this isn't everyone's bag, is an eye round, a beef eye round roast, okay? Also on the smoker right now. Of course, the brisket, a little bit of black pepper, bunch of salt, both sides. Hopefully that bark is setting up nicely right now. On the eye round, I was able to put a little mustard base down. I have this also a Traeger rub that is, it's like a truffle butter type flavor, and I layered that stuff on there. very excited to, when the show is over in an hour or so, to head home, to take that thing off, to throw it in the oven or I'll probably put it in the cooler actually because I'm taking it down to my buddy's house. Put it in the cooler, let it rest for a couple hours, and then right around 4:30, I'm going to be slicing into this bad boy, and we're going to be enjoying some delightful brisket. All because I now have a neighborhood butcher I can get prime cuts of meat from that are not loaded up with antibiotics. They're not loaded up with hormones. I'm talking, of course, about Southern Steer, brand new partner here on the Sean O'Connell Show. 1705 North Redwood Road down in Saratoga Springs. Dan and Aubrey Gunther are the brains behind this operation. It is a family business. They got, nieces, nephews, grandkids, kids. Everyone in the clan is working down at Southern Steer, and they are providing you with high-quality beef. That's my bag. Chicken, poultry, pork, elk. Maybe you want some yak ribs. Whatever you're looking for, tell them, and they'll try to find it for you. Artisan meats from humanely sourced places. Right now, specials on chicken, $3.99 a pound. Pork chops, $5.99 a pound. Black Angus ground beef, $7.49 a pound. And more discounts coming as football season approaches when you join the Southern Steer Rewards Club for daily and weekly savings. Don't forget about the full meal combos where you just walk in, you say, give me the 3 meals for under $60, everything I need, mains, sides, sauces, rubs, give me all of it. They've already got them for you. They can prepackage them. They send you home. You throw it on the grill. You throw it in the air fryer. You throw it in the oven, and dinner is taken care of. It is a one-stop shop for all things meats, all things dinner. Head down to Southern Steer, 1705 North Redwood Road in Saratoga Springs, and tell them OC sent you. Get yourself loaded up for the tailgate. Week 0 this weekend. Week 1, you got less than a week. You have 6 days to be prepared. Get down to Southern Steer and do it right now. Hour 3 begins next on the Sean O'Connell Show with JT Wistersill. He's here in studio to talk Utes. It's Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Right, hour 3 on a Friday of the Sean O'Connell Show. We air our grievances at 1:30. That means the text line is open, the Twitter is open. We haven't had a good quality airing of grievances for several weeks now because I've been gone so many of these Fridays. So get your texting fingers ready and air your grievances at 877-353-0700. JT Wistersill here in studio with us, Locked On Utes podcast, publisher of Ute Authority over at 247 Sports. Welcome in. How are you, sir? Hold on. We got to get his mic fired up here. Try again.
How about now?
Yeah, there he is.
There
There's
we go.
JT.
I was complimenting the studio, but
It's a nice studio.
It's a very nice studio.
We got a little Britton Covey jersey hanging right behind me.
Mm-hmm.
Got a couple bobbleheads over there, including the late, great Steve Klauke. We miss Klauke.
Mm-hmm.
That red on red helmet is my favorite Utah helmet ever.
Really?
My favorite one.
I like was it 2019 hand-painted helmets they did when they just throttled UCLA? If you remember those?
Which ones were those?
I forgot exactly. They looked a little Ohio State-ish off the top of my head.
Oh, yeah.
But those were my personal favorite. Obviously, the U.S. Salt Lake ones were great, too. I don't think they've announced what we're doing with the hand-painted ones this year yet, though. Right?
Not yet. The guy who does or who has done, Armando, who's done the hand-painteds, he's now like the best in the business, and every school is having him do their hand-painteds. I've been following him. He's doing the King of Mardi Gras Tulane ones this year. They're having a hand painted that are a Mardi Gras theme for Tulane, and it is the 50th year, I think, of the Smurf turf at Boise State. So he did an homage on the helmet. It's painted like Smurf turf, very subtle, but really cool for Boise State. And that one actually made it into the NCAA football game. That helmet, that special edition helmet. So fingers crossed that we get another great hand-painted from the University of Utah. I think they gave us the announcement on what like the stadium theme's going to be, like wear red, wear black, wear whatever. And usually I think the open date, that might be the hand-painted date. We'll see.
Okay.
Anyway, to more important things. I started the show today fired up, ranting pretty hard about an article that, look, this is what happens when you're just so close to football season. You don't have any real football to talk about yet. Our guy, Jason Batakia, who does an excellent job for the Salt Lake Tribune, caught up with some former players, and I think there's 6 that are cited in the article who have, made claims that they were pressured into playing while they were injured at the University of Utah. And this was, of course, in the Kyle Whittingham tenure. And there are various accounts of whether or not they were threatened to, like with the loss of a scholarship. The one sentence is they said they would take away my scholarship or put somebody above me on the depth chart. Yeah, that's what happens when you're not playing. Anyway, and I was like, look, I don't like the timing of it. I don't like the general sort of piling on notion of trying to dig up everything that was bad about the Kyle Whittingham era now that he's gone. I feel like it's a bad reaction that we're all having somewhat collectively on different levels to his absence. But I know you read the article. I know you took a look at it. What are your thoughts on what came out in the Salt Lake Tribune today about players being pressured to play while injured?
This is a college football problem across the country. This isn't oh my gosh, this is just at Utah. I have family members that have told me, whether it's swimming or various other sports, they felt pressure to play. So, and this happens at every level. So, yes, it's out there. It's Utah. It's players putting their names on it, which is also very, very interesting. A couple remained anonymous, but this happens everywhere where you have guys that basically they're going to try to put a Band-Aid over it to push through and play. You're going to have players that want to do that. And yes, it is unfortunate in instances where players probably should sit out that this happens, but this does happen everywhere. This isn't, oh my gosh, I can't believe Kyle Whittingham did this, and every other college athletic department is never doing anything like that. This happens everywhere. So we'll see what happens under the Scally era. I know Utah's trying to move away from certain things like this. That's the reporting in here too that we're hearing. So we'll see what happens. But as I said, I read this and I was like, oh yeah, this is what happens across everywhere in college athletics. Just interesting to see the players put their name on it. I know Van Fillinger's mom, I think they had the audio of like a doctor visit in there too. So it's extensive, it's deep, but it wasn't shocking to me because, as I mentioned, I've heard many stories like this from other college athletes at various levels.
I want to say, I'm not putting words in JT's mouth here. I want to say this. Fotu said they threatened to take away my scholarship. I have a really hard time with this. I have a really hard time. This is Tavita Fotu, not Lecky Fotu. This is Tavita Fotu, who had a disappointing run at the University of Utah. He kind of underperformed in a lot of areas of football in his life. That made it so his path to the University of Utah was not as direct, right? Had to do the JUCO thing to get grades and all that kind of thing. And that's neither here nor there. A lot of guys do that. Some of the great Utah football players have come through the JUCO ranks. Garrett Bowles and Starr and all these guys have come through the JUCO ranks and ended up being unbelievable players. They threatened to take away my scholarship. Now, this is something I would like to get a little bit more robust of a conversation about, a little bit more significant of an investigation on, because there's a tacit agreement in the older version of college football that your scholarship was good for 4 years. Now we know that's not the case with the transfer portal because, hey, we want you here. Great. And then the next transfer window rolls around. Hey, actually, we want another guy to have your scholarship. We think you should go. Now, players, as far as I'm aware, and this is every school all over the country, I don't know of a single instance in which a coach has said to a player, you no longer have a scholarship here. I'm taking it away from you, and that player's staying at their school, right? And that player, like, testing that out and saying, oh, really? I'm on the team. I'm under scholarship right now. Yes, you're encouraging me to transfer. I don't want to. You're going to take away my scholarship. I have a really hard time believing that, like, Luther Ellis or Lewis Powell came up to Tavita Fotu and said, we're going to take your scholarship away. I don't want to call a young man a liar. When we feel victimized and we feel like we're on the wrong end of a conversation or we're on the wrong end of some kind of treatment, we have a tendency to exaggerate. We have a tendency to embellish. And even if they said something to the effect of, you're on scholarship, you need to play, you could interpret that as, oh, you're saying if I don't play, then I'm off scholarship. I don't know. But I have a really hard time just taking at face value that coaches were going around threatening to take away guys' scholarships with any level of seriousness. Maybe during the play, like you screw up, you get a stupid penalty. Yeah. We're going to take your scholarship away. Like, whatever. I just have a hard time with this, JT, because these are legal documents, these scholarship offers. To tell a kid, well, if you're not going to play through that rolled ankle, then I'm going to take your scholarship away. I have a hard time with that one.
I agree. I think it's a lot. And as you kind of mentioned, too, there's different variations and degrees of this stuff of, hey, a guy might be somewhere for 4 years, and then he plans on, hey, I have my fifth year, I want to spend it at this school, and the school has other plans because that player hasn't performed. I know of a player who was at an SEC school that he went through his 4 years. He was a top 300 recruit. He was a disappointment. He thought that he was going to be able to continue there. The SEC coach that came in there had only been there for a year, and he basically said, hey, we're not going to do that. We're going to go in another direction and have this spot be open up. So you do see it happen, but once again, that was something, what they do. They fulfilled the 4-year obligation as well, if we talk about with some of these scholarships too. So yeah, I have a hard time with it too. I totally agree with what you're saying. I just look at these instances, these situations, like these are big, major things. So, I mean, the title of the article itself is the former Utah football players say they felt pressured to play through injuries. That's what we talked about last time. That happens everywhere. I just have a really hard time seeing these coaches going up to guys being like, do this or we'll revoke your scholarship. I mean, we've gotten to talk to a lot of these coaches too. And, you know, we also hear about what a great family culture Utah has. If this is how they're operating with everyone, is that the case? I don't think so. And that's where this is also hard, because a lot of these guys are disgruntled players. It's not like, oh, this Utah legend who had a great career and then he's going back and looking and saying, hey, I felt pressure to play through this injury. It's a lot of guys who didn't probably have quite the career they wanted to, and now you look back and see him make these comments, and I hear what they're saying, but at the same time, some of this stuff just doesn't add up with other aspects we know about this Utah football program.
Look, we have to be fair to everyone here, and the correct thing to state is that Utah football, specifically the Kyle Whittingham era of Utah football, did have an issue with handling not only injuries, but I think more importantly, the narrative around injuries. Mm-hmm. The Cam Rising situation, you look no further than that, right? Cam Rising is one of the 3 best quarterbacks to ever play at this school. I don't know that the next time we're going to get Cam Rising saying nice things about Utah football or saying anything about Utah football, because his experience was compromised by that whole situation. He felt a little bit betrayed. He felt a little bit thrown under the bus because he was trying to get his leg right. It wasn't happening at the pace, and Kyle Whittingham was trying to hide, the starting quarterback being injured from the media. And so this narrative perpetuated for literally a whole season, like he might be available this week, he might be available this week. Hey, maybe we'll see him this week. When Cam knew and everyone knew, and he was kind of, he had the gag order put on him. You're not going to tell people that your knee was totally destroyed and that you're not going to play this year, whatever. So, yes, the previous staff deserves criticism about the way they handled injuries and the narrative around injuries. 6 players talking about, hey, I was pressured to play football when I was hurt, it's not news. I mean, I love Jason Batacchio. The stuff in here, the sensationalized, hey, the doctor said I could miss, and then the coach said I couldn't. Well, coaches don't get to supersede doctors anymore in college football. If this was an article from the 1980s, and somebody said, yeah, the doctor said I shouldn't play, but coach made me, all right. Ultimately, these decisions come down to, yes, coach wants you to play. That's always going to be the case. If you're not physically able to, a doctor has to stop you from doing it. They can't, they're risking their licenses and things like that. If they were wrong about how severe an injury was, I suppose there's a gray area there. But I just have a really hard time with the framing of a lot of this, and more importantly, the timing of everyone saying, now Kyle Whittingham is a villain. Now we hate Kyle Whittingham. So let's show everyone what a bad guy he was and how he forced me to play when I was hurt and he didn't care about player safety. You as a fan do not care about player safety, so pretending otherwise is silly.
That's a great point. And yeah, the Whittingham part of this is just what makes it. And I understand he's not here anymore, so maybe that's why the players feel like, okay, now we can come out and talk about it. But Kyle Whittingham did a lot of great things for this university. And the reason that Utah is the type of program where they're at the point where fans feel slighted that Kyle Whittingham would go to Michigan, even though we know a lot about the whole exit and everything that even happened there. But the fact that fans even feel the fact that they have a right to feel slighted in their eyes that someone would choose Michigan over Utah shows how much Kyle Whittingham did for this football program, did for this university, elevated them to the heights that they are at now. So it's just really strange. I mean, we're a week away from kickoff, as you mentioned, too. So the timing of all this is really strange, too. And, yeah, it's unfortunate that we're not kind of focused on more of the game, the team next week, and instead we're hearing from disgruntled players, and it's just another thing in the Whittingham era, at least on the exit. I actually said this on the radio earlier this week, Sean. I think this is one of the messiest exits we've seen from a legendary head coach, and stuff like this only piles onto it, and how he's going to be remembered.
That's probably why the biggest problem I have with it is because there's a low-hanging fruit situation here where if I throw a Whittingham name into anything right now, people are going to have to, because it's polarizing.
Very.
Right? And I don't think Kyle Whittingham should be a polarizing figure at all in Utah football. I've been on record saying that. We joked and we had this tongue-in-cheek thing for a couple weeks after he was gone. We treated him like Voldemort. I said, he who shall not be named, because we were talking more about Whit for 3 weeks in January than we talked about anything else. And he was already at Michigan, right? And we're still doing this. This Utah football team under Morgan Scalley, with all these questions and all these great players returning, both of those things are true. They're playing a game in 6 days. And we're talking about Kyle Whittingham again. That's my problem. That's the issue I have. And I don't begrudge Jason Batacchio or anyone else who's a Big J journalist reporting what they think is a story. But my umbrage is with the fact that I think this is a story. It's not. If you go to BYU and you ask every player who has ever had a bump or a bruise or an injury, whether or not they felt pressure, negative or positive or good or bad, to get back on the field, the true answer is yes. If you go to USC, the true answer is yes. If you go to Oklahoma, every coach wants their best players on the field. And one of the most difficult things, the most difficult decisions that coaches have to make is figuring out what percentage of my starter is still better than my backup. In this case, I keep using Van Fillinger because he's the headline name from this story. He's your leading sack man in 2024. He started off the season on an absolute tear. He finished the season with 6 sacks. 5 of those 6 were the first 3 weeks of the season, right? That's what we're talking about here. He got hurt, and he tried to play through it, maybe because of pressure from the coaches, maybe because of pressure from his own self, whatever. He tried to play through it, and at some point, a decision probably needed to be made that the backup was better than a 50% Van Fillinger or a 75% Van Fillinger. It's one of the hardest things that coaches have to do. They don't want to have to do it. They want the best guy out there. They want the best guy playing. And so sometimes they make the wrong decision. They let the starter, who's heavily compromised, play instead of a healthy backup. That is something that is more worth criticism to me than pressuring a player to be out there.
Do you remember the 2024 Utah-Arizona State game, the final game that Cam Rising ever played?
I was there. I filled in for Sly on the sidelines. Sly was in the Pac-12 booth, and I got to come out of the bullpen, and I was working the radio sidelines in that game. And I was down on the field on snap number 2 when Cam Rising got rolled up on and couldn't walk the rest of the game. And that was a failure. Like, that is something we can be critical of. That was a failure by this coaching staff to be accountable to the other 10 guys on the offense and the other 11 starters on the defense and everyone else who played in that game. They were like, we're riding with Cam Rising even though he's not good.
Didn't he might have given them a better chance to win, though, than Isaac Wilson for the rest of the season when we saw it play out? You don't think so?
Cam Rising was immobile in that game. He couldn't step into his throws. Every ball, I mean, they had a chance to win the game. If it wasn't for the pick play, they win the game. You remember the penalty?
That's right.
Where Pittman was called for the illegal block, the crack block or whatever, and it was ruled a pick play. If that doesn't happen, that play goes for a touchdown and they win, right? You barely squeak by in that one, if not for that penalty. But despite the fact that you had a heavily compromised quarterback, he could not complete passes.
No.
And because the narrative had built up to be this huge monster surrounding the program for years, for 2 years, right? When is Cam Rising back? When is Cam Rising back? When is Cam Rising back? Cam's got to play. Cam's got to play. Cam's got to play. Everyone felt like, look, Cam's got to play. Cam's our guy. We're riding with Cam. It was clear at halftime that he could not play. And Kyle Whittingham said in the postgame, we asked Cam, he said he wanted to go. Cam Rising is never going to tell people I don't want to play a game.
For sure.
Because everyone had been building this narrative around him, cashing his NIL checks, not actually wanting to be on the field. These guys hear stuff. They try to mute it out. They try to plug their ears on it. But he had been basically, he'd gone from being the most popular player in the program to a scapegoat for some of the program's problems because he was injured and people didn't realize how injured, to when he's back, they were like, oh, yeah, he doesn't even want to play. He's not tough. He's not working hard to rehab. That's what he's in that Arizona State game on one leg, knowing he's a bad player at this point because he can't throw and he can't run. Those are the two things he was good at. And the coaching staff said, do you want to play? Of course he's going to say yes. There's no other answer for a player. If I ask Van Fillinger, right, we go back to the 2024 season that I think he's alluding to in this article. Mm-hmm. I was pressured to play. They said I should take 6 weeks off. 3 weeks later, they're like, get yourself back on the field. If I ask him in week 3, do you want to play? It's your choice. Are you going to play? Van, I'm sorry. Please come on the show and let's talk about this. JT, do you think he's saying, no, I don't want to play?
I think he was probably trying to be like, you know what, I can try to be out there and do it for my team. And then now as he looks back on it and goes, okay, wait a minute, had I taken that year and redshirted and then come back, probably have a better year rather than, as you said, feasted against the bad competition and didn't end up that way. Things are always different in the heat of the moment, and then you can look back as you get further removed from stuff. So that's where it's really tough, as you mentioned. This is what Van is saying now, but if we could go back in that time, in that moment, most college football players, especially with just the dedication and everything it takes to get out onto the field, they want to play every opportunity they can, especially if it means helping their brothers win a game.
It's a bad look for an individual, and it's totally understandable. I said this in the first segment of the show. When I was a walk-on at the University of Utah who felt like he was getting the sour end of every stick, right? If you come to me 2 years later as a reporter from the Salt Lake Tribune, is Kyle Whittingham a good coach? Does he treat his players fairly? I'd have been like, no, and here's 12 examples why my sorry walk-on ass wasn't treated properly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was disgruntled when I left the program because I thought I should have been given a better opportunity than I ever got or that I ever earned in the eyes of the coaches, right? I have since come to grips with the reality that, like, it wasn't going to happen. I didn't do things the way that I should have in order to maximize those opportunities, right? But you have regrets. You look back on it. I think that if we had this same conversation with Jalen Glover and Miki Sukataraga and Van Fillinger and Michael Pittman and all these guys, if we have these conversations with them 5 years from now, they're going to be a little bit different. If we have them 10 years from now, they're going to be a little bit different again. Right now, it's easy for those guys to look back and say, yeah, I got screwed by a coaching staff who told me I needed to play while I was hurt. Dude, you have 4 years to play college football. If you're not out there on the field, you're not playing college football. And when you're working in a warehouse somewhere or you're sitting at a cubicle in an office and you're going like, oh, that was pretty cool when I had to play on a broken ankle, but I heard 50,000 fans cheering my name. I don't know. The whole thing bothers me that, again, you and I should be sitting here 6 days away from the games kicking off, talking about our expectations for this number, for that number. What does the Idaho game actually look like? And instead, we're revising history and figuring out whether or not the coaching staff was too mean to the players. It's dumb.
It is. And like you said, it's unfortunate. I mean, heck, Idaho actually plays tonight, by the way. Idaho plays tonight. So there's actually Utah's opponent is in action tonight. And obviously there's a lot, as you mentioned, too, you could get into and talk about this Utah team. But instead, we're focusing on disgruntled players, most of whom, I mean, actually almost everyone is named in this article, with the exception of maybe Van, didn't make a major impact at Utah, I'd say. I mean, Mickey was okay at defensive end. That was one of the rare examples of them moving him to tight end. Usually when they change guys' positions, that works. Didn't work perfectly in Mickey's case, too. So really unfortunate how this all ended up. And, yeah, we're almost there to game, so then we can start focusing on that stuff. But very interesting timing on all this.
Let's prognosticate a little bit. Yeah. Like you said, Idaho is in action tonight. Look, I'm not going to ask you, does Utah win this game? They better damn well win the game. But what is it when we have a conversation next Friday, what is a success for Morgan Scalley's first regular season game as a head coach? What is going to be an indicator of good health for this program based on a result against Idaho?
Yeah, Utah won against Cal Poly 63-9, so you get another Big Sky opponent coming into your house this year. I think you have to hold them under 20 points. I think anything more than that's a disappointment. And honestly, I think any first half touchdowns you could even argue are maybe a disappointment, barring one wild and crazy play. I think Utah, honestly, a big success is probably a 50-point win for them. Idaho won 4 total games last year, only 2 of those coming against Big Sky opponents. And they second year of the head coach, so I think they'll be a little better. I like their quarterback at the FCS level. They have solid FCS linebackers. But what did I just say? FCS level. This is Power 4 for a reason. I think Utah should win this one big. I think a successful game for the Utes in this one should be a 50-point win. I think we should see Brandon Rose in this game. That's a success to me if Brandon Rose gets in the game.
Okay. I like that, actually. It would be nice to see Brandon Rose back out there. You know, he's got a live arm.
He's fun.
I want 5 different players to score touchdowns against Idaho.
I think that happens for sure.
It's got to, right?
Yeah, I mean, Wayshawn got in last year. Bert Ficklin had some big plays last year. Dampier. I'd be shocked if we didn't have. I said Utah should absolutely hit 50 in this game to me. I think they're that talented, and we should be feeling great about all the questions. The offensive line, defensive line, everything should be awesome for Utah after this game. That's a success.
All right, Utes Insiders brought to you by Mountain Home Services. Do you have any grievances you want to air? Because we're going to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to air grievances.
Airing grievances right now. I mean, honestly, I'm fired up to be in studio with you. Glad we got Utah football next week. And I'm actually a little bummed. This is our last week 0. Next year, the college football season all kicks off week 1, all the games at the same time. I kind of like the week 0 thing. I know we will always want a little better matchups, but I think it's kind of fun. Like the Dublin game next year is just kind of buried amidst the week 1 slate. I wish they'd move week 0 back and have it be kind of this thing where we get our taste of a little bit of football rather than it all just coming at once in full bore. So tiny grievance there.
I actually think the scheduling thing is going to be up in the air sooner than later, because if we expand the college football playoff and the coaches get their way, they want the playoff to begin like conference championship week, and that would potentially push week 0 to being week 1, and maybe what we call week -1 right now would be week 0, whatever. We might start college football in mid-August if these coaches get the schedule that they want. So we'll stay on top of all of it. JT, thanks for coming in studio.
Great being here.
That's JT Wistersill. Check him out at Utes Authority, the Locked On Utes podcast. Airing of grievances is next, 877-353-0700. Get it off your chest. Tell me what's on your mind, sports-related or otherwise. Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700. The time for airing of grievances is now, right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. I got a lot of problems with you people. So we found out that one of our favorite Utah Jazz beat writers, Sarah Todd, has passed through the crucible of a layoff in sports media. This is just, unfortunately, everyone who's worked in the business for any amount of time has experienced this. They downsize, they lay off, they restructure. You know, I've had 4 shows canceled now, and you just hope that there's greener grass on the other side. Sarah Todd was really good to us. Sarah Todd, we had a great time talking Utah Jazz with her. I will say this. My grievance is not even with a business having to conduct layoffs, because I know that's just part of things sometimes, and that would be the easiest grievance to air here. My grievance is, and I'm very serious about this part, there are people, and online is a place where we all show the worst version of ourselves sometimes, but there are people celebrating an individual who has a family losing their job. My grievance is with you. 877-353-0700. If you hate my radio show, don't listen to it. Don't celebrate if I ever lose this job, though. I got mouths to feed. I got a family. You got a family. I will never celebrate anybody losing their job and being put on the unemployment line and trying to figure out if they should apply for unemployment insurance, or can I land on my feet? Can I stay in this field, or can I not stay in this field? I'm questioning whether my work was ever good in the first place. If you've ever been laid off or fired, you know it's a terrible experience, right? If you don't like the way that Sarah Todd covers something, don't read her stuff. Move on with your life. If you don't like the way that Jason Batakiao is writing articles about the Utah football team right now, just don't click on his articles. Don't root for someone to lose their job ever, ever, ever. That is bad karma for you and everyone in your bloodline, man. Don't do that. First of all, I mean, you can't keep everybody happy. So when inevitably this show gets canceled, I don't know when it'll happen, hopefully not anytime soon, there will be people that are like, oh, good riddance, he sucked anyway. Grievance, preemptively. Don't root for people to lose their jobs. Don't celebrate when people do lose their jobs. It is an awful thing to be a grown adult and you're making money and you got health insurance and you're feeling good, and then you don't. You don't have that. That sucks, man. 877-353-0700. Air your own grievances here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Andrew, it's your first time on the airing of grievances. Do you have any particular grievances you'd like to air?
Well, so is this sports grievances or just life?
Any life grievance, anything you want. That's the beauty of the airing of grievances. You can just throw it against the wall and see if it sticks.
All right, I have a grievance. This might be a weird one, but I have a 1-month-old kid.
Congratulations, boy or girl?
He's a boy.
Awesome.
He's awesome. Best thing to ever happen.
It's the best thing in the world.
Quite literally, couldn't be happier. My grievance comes with diapers, and it's not with changing the diapers. It's with the diaper themselves.
Okay.
The transition from the newborn diaper to the size 1 diaper.
Uh-huh.
That is my grievance, because he's too big around his belly for the newborn. So whenever he poops, it blows up the top.
Yep.
If he wears that newborn.
Yeah.
But his legs don't quite fill in the spot on the size 1.
So now it comes out the legs.
So now it comes out the other side. In fact, driving up, my wife was being picked up by her mom, and she brought the baby, and they, so we drove up to the studio. We parked. Her mom came, got her kid, just completely blew out in the car seat, and we're like, you got to get bigger legs, kid. But my grievance is, how is there not?
You got to get that baby doing some squats, dog.
How do we not have diapers that fit the belly and the legs?
Okay,
that's my grievance.
It's a great grievance, Andrew. Oh, that's a phenomenal grievance, because Every parent has experienced this. It is like the blowout is just the least convenient, most disgusting, terrible thing. You got to have 2 extra outfits anytime you leave the house with an infant because of that. And you're right. The big diaper, all right, the big diaper corporations, they're not helping you.
No.
It's crazy. As your kids get older, you'll find that like they get big, they get to a certain point where it's just like, okay, this diaper doesn't even hold all the pee. If they do like a normal amount of pee, it's like overloads the absorbency of the diaper. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
So yeah, diaper companies grievance against you. I'll echo that for you.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, that's a great grievance. I think I have a fix though for you. Go super old school, cloth diapers.
See, does that actually is that actually a good move? Because then you have to wash the diaper.
Yeah, probably. It's probably not. It's disgusting. Cloth diapers. Obviously, like your parents probably wore cloth diapers when they were kids.
Probably.
I don't know. Your parents are probably pretty young.
My dad. Well, no. So I'm the 7th kid. So
You're the
I'm
7th kid
out of 9. So like my dad's in his 60s.
Time out. You got 9 kids in your family?
Yeah. 7 boys, 2 girls.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I love a big family story.
No.
9 kids is big. Even for Utah, that's a big family.
Yeah. So my parents are actually my dad's technically a baby boomer.
Okay.
He's in his 60s.
All right.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, your parents wore cloth diapers when they were kids. So talk to your grandparents or talk to your dad's older siblings and see if they ever had to change a cloth diaper. See if that fixes your problem.
Yeah, we'll see.
My parents are just cheap, and they passed that on to me. My youngest brother is now, well, he's 9 years younger than me, so he's 33, okay? And when he was little, for like a 2-week period, my parents were just like, these diapers are too expensive. We're going cloth diapers. And we had cloth diapers and safety pins because I guess that's something that existed back then. And for like 2 weeks, my youngest brother, I was 9 years old, helping my parents change diapers, and they were cloth diapers.
That's horrible.
Horrific. So disgusting. So maybe don't actually do that.
Yeah.
But 877-353-0700. Sam says, previous grievance update. Door-to-door salesman, different person this time, stops by and tells me they noticed it looks like I had the original siding on the house. Me. Oh, you're a noticer? Did you happen to notice the sign? Points at the prominently displayed no soliciting sign. The salesman admitted they did see it, but they were not selling anything, just giving me some information. I laughed at him and closed the door. My point being, you have been warned that I don't want to be disturbed in my own home. If you ignore it, I can in turn hassle you back. Correct, Sam. Yes. If you have a no soliciting sign, you are telling anyone who's knocking on your door to give you information that you didn't ask for, to sell you something you didn't ask for, that they should expect a frosty, dare I say, even a hostile reception. Yep. If you have no soliciting on there, that is like, it's like beware of dog. If there's a beware of dog sign on the fence and I hop the fence and the dog bites me, it's my fault. If there's no soliciting on the window or on the door and I knock on the door and you're rude to me or you insult me or you close the door in my face, that's on me. You got the warning. Don't ignore the warning signs. That's what a no soliciting sign is. And I know that there are a lot of door-to-door salespeople here in Utah, so they're like probably mixed reactions to this, but the no soliciting sign is the polite way for us who don't want to be solicited to tell you to, skedaddle. Get on your way. All right, Jordan on the text line, airing this grievance. Stickers or labels that are supposed to be temporary, but for some reason it requires rubbing alcohol or a razor blade to get off. Absolutely yes.
Every time I try to get the sticker off my windshield for my oil change replacement.
Yes. That one they make hard because they don't want it to come off. Right? You're trying to get it off because they always put it like up in the corner and it distracts you or whatever.
Yeah.
They want you to to notice it.
But my car tells me. Like, it has the mile countdown to when I need that that oil change.
See, those stickers have they're rendered obsolete by newer cars because they count you down to your oil change. And they tell you, my car right now is on I'm minus 63 days from an oil change. I need an oil change. This one, multiple grievances. People filming themselves eating or commercials of people eating makes me want to eat that particular thing even less. Okay, is this true even with the old Carl's Jr. burger commercials that featured very attractive women eating those burgers?
I think it works for if it's a professional commercial, but if it's the Instagram reel of that random influence, no, I can't do that.
My problem with the Instagram influencer eating a meal is they all have the same reaction. I don't believe it anymore, right? Because what they do is they take a bite of whatever thing it is, like the crumble cookie or the amazing bite of ramen or something, and every single one of them does the thing that goes, oh my gosh. They close their eyes and act like they're having some out-of-body experience. I don't believe you. I don't believe you anymore. This is what I've been watching this on the Travel Channel for 20 years now. You all react the same way.
Especially when it's the same person reacting the same way every time.
Yeah.
Terrible.
It's you know what? Guy Fieri is trash shows, but he doesn't react the same way every time he takes a bite.
Yeah.
So we believe him still. What we can't believe is that he's still wearing those clothes, but we believe his reaction to the food. Infants that cry when they're tired. You can't know, Jordan. You cannot air a grievance against a baby. Infants that cry when they're tired. I understand all babies do this. It's the one thing I have no control over. So just fall asleep, please. Oh, that's so good. You're right. You can't force a baby to fall asleep, but you can't air a grievance against a baby for crying. Oh, that's so good, Jordan. Thank you. That's wonderful. Derek says, secondary grievance. I don't care how cheap you are. Reusable cloth diapers are disgusting. Do not use. Okay, fair. Okay, here we are with another grievance. Other bicyclists going too fast or reckless on trails or on roads because then everybody hates bikes, even if you are being respectful. That's from Spencer. Yeah, Spencer, you're right. The bad actors in the biking world have ruined riding a bike for everyone. We had this a couple weeks ago when I rode my bike into work, and I was basically airing a grievance against somebody who was just mean to me for no reason because I was on a bike and they were in a minivan. I'm trying to obey the laws. I'm not the guy who's just I'm also a car because I'm on a bike on the road. I was trying to get out of the way and that kind of thing. But yeah, because there are so many bicyclists who think they're better than the driver of the car or who act crazy on a trail and ruin it for the hikers or run into somebody's dog because they think they own the place, then all bicyclists get bad reputations. In fact, this kind of factors in for every group that you could ever be put in. If you are the bad example of that group and you ruin what people think of the group for everyone else, grievance against you. Be a good example of what your thing is, right?
Absolutely.
What is your thing, Andrew? What are you? Radio producer? Dad?
I guess the thing that everyone comes to talk to me about is sports and specific. I watch sports.
Okay, so you're a sports media guy, right? If you're the sports media guy in your group of friends and you're super arrogant about it and you're like a jerk about it, then they're going to think that all of us sports media guys are like me and are arrogant jerks. So you have to be nice, okay?
You're right. I should be better. I'm sorry, guys.
So you have to not ruin my already earned bad reputation. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. 877-353-0700 if you want to keep airing your grievances. I'm happy to hear from you. Another reminder, you're getting closer and closer to game day, which means you're running out of time to plan out your game day meal, whether it's a tailgate, whether it's a grill with your friends, whether it's just you making a nice meal for yourself because you want delicious meats in front of you while you watch in front of the TV by yourself Southern Steer Butcher has you hooked up. Go down to Saratoga Springs. I promise you it is worth the drive. 1705 North Redwood Road. Dan and Aubrey Gunther are going to hook you up. If you want the pre-made meal so you don't have to think about the menu, they've got that for you. If you want a ribeye sliced to a particular thinness, they can accommodate you there. If you're looking for the perfect ground chuck, maybe a pork and beef mixture, maybe an elk and beef mixture, so that you can make your world-famous meatloaf, they've got that for you as well. Southern Steer Rewards Club gives you daily and weekly savings. They've got the full meal combos. They've got the, hey, I can just throw this in the air fryer, in the microwave, or on the grill, and I'll be done and feed my family in 20 minutes. It's a one-stop shop. It's the neighborhood barbershop from your grandparents' era, but with the modern twist and the modern convenience. Southern Steer Butcher in Saratoga Springs, 1705 North Redwood Road. Tell them OC sent you. And while you're there, grab some of their signature seasonings, salts, rubs, jams, salsa, marinades, and more. Last segment of the show next, we'll give away 4 passes to the Utah State Fair coming up September 10th through the 20th at the Fair Park. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. 877-353-0700. I've got a family 4-pack of tickets to give away as Utah starts their season in 6 days. The Utah State Fair Park comes September 10th through the 20th. 4 tickets to the Utah State Fair. If you can answer this question at 877-353-0700. Look, Van Fillinger was a major topic of conversation on the show today, and I was once again hypercritical. The guy probably hates me. But let's take a positive. Give me his final year with the University of Utah. How many sacks did Van Fillinger have for the Utes? 877-353-0700. I will give you a family 4-pack of tickets. He happened to lead the team that year. Hi, Spence Checketts, host of The Drive. Andrew's got to turn on your mic.
Andrew.
There he
Hey,
is.
buddy.
Hey.
Hi, Andrew.
Andrew's done a great
How's it
job
going?
today in the stead of James Peterson.
Have I met Andrew before?
You have maybe met him,
Yeah,
yes,
we might
but
have passed each other in the hallways.
Good to see you, man.
7th of 9, so bigger family even than the Checketts.
7th of 9? You're the 7th child of 9 kids?
Yes, sir.
Congratulations for making it out alive, dog.
Thank you.
I'm the oldest of 6, so I thought we had a big family.
Yeah.
What's the range? Oldest is how old?
Jeez, oldest is 35 this year.
Youngest is?
He would be 15 or 16.
All right. That's an acceptable range.
9 kids in 20 years.
That's
basically.
acceptable. I mean, that's chaos, but at one point we had 5 under the age of 11.
Holy cow.
Awesome.
You should have seen us traveling.
That's so cool.
Everyone hated us so much. Yeah, chaos for sure. So, look, I've heard a little bit, tuned in here or there, to listen to you talk about the story. And I think there's some complexities that are fair to acknowledge. But I feel like the wailing and gnashing of teeth are coming from people that just have never been in a locker room before. And I'm not dismissing anything that, probably is fair to talk about and look at. I played for 4 different coaches. I had high school, AAU, a little bit of college. And certainly the oldest coach I had was the one that didn't have any time for us talking about a sprained ankle. He's like, you're fine, you're going to play. And then I had some coaches that were probably all the way on, one coach that was all the way on the other side of things where it's like, oh, okay, you're in a bad mood. It's all right. You can go home. So, but the people out there, at least that I've seen, that are really angry, I don't know that you've ever played a sport before. And I don't want to be obtuse about this entire thing. On the scale of, oh my gosh, and much ado about nothing, where are you? As somebody who played college football.
I'm like a half inch away from much ado about nothing.
Yeah, that's what I figured, yeah.
And look, this is an opinion-based show. This
Sure.
is a column. I'm not a journalist, okay? So I appreciate the work being done by Jason Batacchio to try to, there is something to be talked about is the communication with the coaching staff and the medical staff above board, and is it proper, and is it truly in the best interest of the student-athlete? But also, as someone who, never achieved anything that these guys in the article achieved and would have died for the coach to even give a rip whether you're on the field or not, I just have a hard time being sympathetic, because if you feel like you're being mistreated when you are treated better than every single student on campus, I just don't have a lot of sympathy for you. I don't have, there's just not a lot of that in me where I can feel bad for college athletes, especially in this era, in this modern era where there's not only scholarships and incredible food, but there's also cash money that sets you up in life better than all of your peers and most people that are out of college for 10 years ahead of you.
And you brought up a point that needs to be underscored, because, the longer and longer you do the job, and just simply the older you get, you have to pause for a minute and question the motivation when it comes to something like this. Why are these players speaking out right now? Why does it feel like there are people at the U that are fine speaking about Witt now that never would have said anything while he was here? The answer's obvious, that he's gone, and they feel like they're safe to talk about it. But there was one player that straight up said he came back for money and didn't get any of it. So how much of this is setting up for a lawsuit where it's like lost wages because I was mistreated? How much of this how much of this comes from players who see the players now making hundreds of thousands of dollars and are looking at their situation and thinking like, if I can create a narrative that money was taken out of my pocket, can I hire an attorney? I'm just talking about possibilities. I have no idea.
Yeah.
You just have to question what the motivation is. Why now? Why you come to the table with this information? I mean, the landscape of college athletics is littered with guys who have tried to sue schools and the NCAA in the name of lost wages because they're seeing how much money these guys are making now. And some of those court cases have been settled to the tunes of millions of dollars. It's actually worked for some of these players, right? So I don't know. My antennas went up, and the question I had was, why are we doing this right now? What's the point?
For me, I didn't go quite as far down the rabbit hole, and I think that the obvious reason why you're doing this right now is right now it's cool to hate Kyle Whittingham in Salt Lake City. There's a lot of people who are mega disgruntled about the exit and what he took with him and the way that things went down, and are pointing a lot of fingers at Whittingham and are now calling into question the character that we used to celebrate that was kind of like the defining factor of Kyle Whittingham. And I think the biggest issue I have with this whole thing is you cannot celebrate and pound your chest for 20 years because you have a hard-nosed, tough football team and then moan about 6 players. And you could find 106. You could find 600 maybe over the course of that time that would say some version of what these guys are saying. But you can then not moan about what is one of the core tenets of being a hard-nosed football team.
Yeah.
You play when you're hurt. You don't complain.
Yeah.
You just get back out on the field and you do your thing.
Yeah.
And nobody ever hears about, like, the Cam Rising situation was handled wrong.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Cam Rising didn't tell us for a year how badly he was hurt. When he finally did, it changed the entire expectation of what he should do, what he should have done, how the coaching staff handled it, whether he or not he should have continued to play in that Arizona State game that was so disastrous. I mean, it changed everything, right? So it's not all perfect. It's not all good, but give me a break. You can't sit here as a Utah football fan, as someone who graduated from the university, as a season ticket holder, and be like, what I care most about is player safety and are these kids being treated right? No, what you care about most is that you had a respectable football team for the last 21 years, and the guy who was in charge of that and the culture that was rooted in his personality sometimes has a downside, and this is that downside.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's well said. And at the risk of sounding like the old guy that's complaining about young people and yelling at a cloud, I have a friend who has a beautiful young daughter and hadn't seen her in a while. Recently caught up with him and asked how's everything going, and he's like, she stopped going to school because she had a bout of some sort of mental something, right? And I want to stop here and be very clear about one thing. I think the progress that has been made about mental health and the conversation around it is vital. And I'm not saying I want it to stop. But if we bring it into a scenario, like I can remember being 15 and 16 and waking up and feeling anxious and not wanting to go to school and not wanting to go to seminary at 6 a.m. before school and feeling like this sucks. And guess what? My parents told me, you're going to school. So, if you're sick, like legitimately sick, don't get the other kids sick, you stay home. But if you feel anxious or if you feel nervous, learning to fight through those things when you're young, to show up to the things that you need to show up to do is a really important part of being able to develop as a fully formed human. And I think lost in the whole mental health is health conversation is, and I've tried to do this with my son who battled some things himself in high school. You want to be very sensitive to the person and the human to make sure they feel taken care of. And then you got to go to work. And then you have to go to school. And then you have to do your homework. And some days that's really, really hard. And when you get up and do that, especially in the days that it's really, really hard, that builds character.
Yeah.
Because when you're in your mid-30s with a mortgage and 2 kids and a job, and you wake up one day and you say, I don't feel well. Well, okay, are you sick? No, I feel off today. Okay, call your boss and tell him you feel off today, and so you're just not going to work. Because that's not how the world works. And maybe the world is working differently than it did when we grew up. But in this story, there's a little bit of like entitlement in a way.
Well, I said this.
Do you
on
understand
the show.
what I'm saying?
I understand 100% of what you're saying. And again, as someone who tried so hard to live this athlete life,
yeah,
and like you have to go through it. You have to push yourself through. And nobody ever made me fight. I had people my parents never wanted me to do it. Right?
Of course.
I chose that, and that means I chose to keep training when I was injured. I chose to get knocked out a couple of times, expose myself to a certain amount of risk. I chose indirectly. I chose the fact that I have a 90-year-old's lower back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all of these things.
Yeah.
I've come to grips with these choices. If you had interviewed me, I said this on the show many times, if you had interviewed me 2 or 3 years after I had transferred away from the University of Utah and you had asked me whether I was treated fairly there, I would have given you 10 examples of how I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that part of it is just the maturity of realizing these are all products of your own choices. Van Fillinger and Jalen Glover and these guys, no one made you be a college football player. You could have walked away at any time.
Yeah.
And if you had made that choice, you would have walked away from the special treatment and the NIL money and the scholarship and the Chef Pete making you every single meal and putting you on a diet plan and all that kind of stuff. So, like, if we talk to these guys in 5 years or in 10 years, their reaction to even this is going to be a lot different than it is today.
Yeah. It also makes you wonder, because the interesting part about some of these players is they were part of potentially the most successful 5-year run of Utah football history with 2 Pac-12 championships and 2 Rose Bowl appearances. And then maybe Witt decided that he was just going to let everybody who was hurt sit, and then for 2 years he had nobody to play. I mean, we haven't heard really from many players that were involved in the 2-year cluster you-know-what, where they were playing Luke Patari at quarterback, and they had, 4th and 5th string dudes all over the field.
There's a game in 6 days. We should not be talking about how players that were hurt 3 years ago felt like they were forced into service.
Yeah, I just find I find it really interesting that this came out today. And look, if we just bottom line this and call it how it is, we all know that there's no love lost with certain people that are running the athletic department and the coach at Michigan. We all know that. So whether it's we're going to file a lawsuit against Freddie, or whether it's hey, we're fine providing access so players can spin something negative about Kyle, it's not that hard to add 2 + 2 here.
Anyone who knows Van Fillinger, text me his number 877-353-0700.
What did you do today?
I want to get him on the show.
Oh, okay.
Because Van Fillinger, he signed up to ride a bull. Did you
I did not know
this?
that. That kid was a beast when he was younger, man. He was good.
He was a beast when he was older. He was a beast when he played through these injuries. He's a monster.
Yeah.
You look at him now, because I watched his little video of like, hey, I'm going to do this thing on social media. I'm going to ride this bull.
Uh-huh.
He looks scarier than he did when he was a player.
Yeah. He was a really talented young man.
But you can't really sob story about how your body is broken and then go ride a bull voluntarily.
Hard to argue with that.
Stay tuned for the drive. I'm sure Spence Checketts will have more on this. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM.